Let's discuss user-defined functions in MATLAB. You have used many functions in MATLAB so far, including fprintf, input, sine, cosine, log, and so many other functions that you use very frequently in pretty much all the scripts. Um, the benefit of writing function is that you can embed your function, which is a program that you're writing, if you want to use that program um, in many other programs, different files. Instead of writing that program over and over again, you can just call the function and for any input variables, and when the function is called, this program that you have saved as a function is going to execute, and it will generate the results in the program from where the function is being called, and then that result is going is going to be used in whatever way you want to use that result. So a lot of stuff is given in the tutorial. I hope you're going to read it thoroughly. You will do the solve examples. Let me go ahead and show you how to create functions and what will be the difference between the function and your regular program. So let's say if I want to create a function first, let's say um, function to generate um, let's say uh, output of two different equations for um, input variables. So let's say in this function we can create um, in this program we can create a function that will generate output of two different equations for their input variables, and this program can be built without a function. So I'm gonna go ahead and create this program both ways. Let's say, and generally in functions, generally you don't start with the comments because comments are assumed to be the help of the function. For example, when you call a help of any function in MATLAB, help plot, help fprintf, you see the help that is generated either in Octave or MATLAB. So you can generate the help of your own function as well, and that help is generated using the comments that you put for that function after you define the function. So how do you define a function? It's very easy. It starts with the word function, and then you define the output variable where the output value of the function is going to go. And all these variables that you use in the function, they're local variables, so they are only contained within the function. You don't have to use the same variable outside the function, assuming that if you use only those variables, then the function will give you the output value. You can use any variable outside the function, or you can use same variable outside the function to hold the output values of the function. All the variables in the functions are local variables. They do not affect anything outside the function, so you can repeat those variables again in your program from where you're calling the function, and it will be perfectly fine. So let's say I have two equations, and I wanna write down. Let's say I have equation for fxy and gxy. So these are two of my output variables, and since I'm collecting two different variables, then I'm gonna represent those variables as a vector at the output. If you have only one variable, you can just write down function, let's say fxy, that's it, without an array or without a vector. Then you put an equal sign, and then you go ahead and put your function name. Let's say this function name, I'll call it fxy underscore gxy, and then all the variables that are required for the function. Okay, so the variables that are required for the functions are, let's say, two variables that we have, x and y. Those are the two variables that we have. So now, as I was discussing about the help of the function, we will write down some comments after the function line, the first line, and that will be help of the function. Anytime you want to call help of the function, you write down help fxy underscore gxy, which is the function name, and it's going to show you help of the function. Now, what do you want to put in help of the function? Anything that can help the person who is using the function to use that function. For example, when I'm creating help of the function, I write down what the function does, what are the input variables of the function, what are the output variables of the function, and what is the format of the function. As simple as that. So let's say if I put help of this function, function is a function to generate output of two different equations for input variables. Let's say the two equations are fx comma y equals, let's assume, let's create an equation, 2x cosine of y. Let's say that's my first equation. And g x comma y equals, let's create another equation, let's say 5xy sine of cosine of xy, right? So we have these two equations, and then let's describe a little bit about the input variables and what is the format of input variables. So let's say input variables x and y can either be a scalar, vector, or matrix. The corresponding outputs, f outputs, f x comma y and g x comma y will be either a scalar, vector, or matrices. Or matrix, I'll just write down matrix. So basically, based on what type of input you are giving, if x is a scalar, y is a scalar, then fxy, gxy will also be scalar. They will have one value each. If x and y are vectors, then fxy, gxy will be vectors as well, and likewise if xy are matrices, gxy and fxy will be matrices as well. Now, extremely important thing is that when you save a function, make sure you save the function with the same name as the function name. If you save the function with any other name, then the function will not be called. So make sure you save the function with the name of fxy underscore gxy. Actually, when you do the save option, like I click my save, then although it is not giving you the same option, but many times it gives you the same option as the name of the function. But make sure you save it. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just save it over here. Doesn't really matter. fxy underscore gxy. That's going to be the name of the function, which is the same thing as this. Okay, so I'm gonna save it. Okay, so now based on your inputs, which you are going to enter when you call the function. Remember, okay, so a couple of things. When you read the tutorial, you will see that in functions, you don't ask user to give input using the input command. All the inputs are passed through the variable x and y that you enter in the parentheses, as you see, fxy underscore gxy, comma, parentheses x comma y. So you're going to put the values of x and y in those parentheses when you call the function. You don't ask user inside the function input the value of x or input the value of y, because you are giving those inputs through the parameters x and y, which are the input parameters or input variables of the function. Likewise, you don't use fprintf to print out the results of the function. All the values of the function, when you calculate through the function, will be transferred to the variable fxy and gxy. Of course, you will have to transfer them. Fxy is equal to this, gxy is equal to this, but you don't go ahead and print those values, because when you call a function, those values are going to be transferred to the variables that you will be using to call the functions from either your command window or from any other program. So let's say if I do fxy, and since xy can be either scalar or vectors, I'm going to use period to multiply, divide, and take the power of x and y, assuming it can be any quantity. So 2, we don't need period here because 2 is a constant, 2 times x, now we need period, cosine of x, that's fxy. Now fxy is my output variable, so whatever is calculated through, this is y, cosine of y, whatever is calculated through 2x cosine of y, that's going to be transferred to my output variable, which is fxy. It's very important that you assign the output variable to the proper values, so that when you call the function, those values will be transferred to the place from where the function is called. None of the output variables should go unassigned, basically. And then the other output variable is gxy, which is 5 times x y sine of cosine of x y. Okay, and observe that I'm using appropriate period signs, because I don't know if user is going to enter x as a scalar, quantity, vector, or matrix. If it is a scalar, you don't have to put periods, but again, since we don't know, it's better to put periods, otherwise it's not going to calculate for a scalar or vector. So this is my function, this is ready. Look, I'm not using any input command, I'm not using any fprintf. I'm going to enter the values of x and y through the input variables, and I'm going to calculate these, and this fxy gxy will be transferred to the output variables of the function, and from there I can call it. Now observe, if I try to run the function, it's going to give an error. So let me go ahead and run the function. Observe, it is giving me error. Why? Because it doesn't know what x is, it doesn't know what y is. So if it goes and start calculating these equations, those values are not defined, right? So you don't run the function, you don't execute the function. What we say, you call the function. How do you call the function? Let me call the function, and make sure when you're calling the function, you should be calling it from the same folder where the function is saved. So I have saved this in this folder, control systems MATLAB, right? If it is different folder where the function is saved, then you cannot call the function unless you make the function global. But right now, just make sure you wherever you are saving the function, your folder should be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and call this function. Let's say, and you can use any output variable, any input variables. You don't have to use the same variable as you're using in the function. As I told you, function variables are just local variables. So let's say I do f comma g instead of fxy comma gxy equals, and the function name fxy underscore gxy, and my input variables. Let's say my input variables are 1 comma 2 for, or let's make it vector, so 1 comma 2 for x, and then 3 comma 4 for y. So let's say I'm making a vector, x is 1 and 2 and y is 3 and 4. So it's going to go ahead and calculate the value of fxy and gxy for when x is 1, y is 3, and then when x is 2 and y is 4. So if you call it, you see that f is negative 1.98 for when x is 1 and y is 3. So it's going to take the first pair of x and y, and then fxy is this negative 2.6 when x is 2 and y is 4. So second pair of x of y, and likewise for g, right? And these values will be passed to fxy, gxy, and then it will be assigned to our local variables that I'm using to call the function, and I'm using to store the output of functions, which are f and g. So I'm storing the output of the functions in f and g, and those are the variables where fxy value will be assigned to f and gxy will be assigned to g. So this is a function. The same thing if you are using a regular program, let's say a program to calculate two equations. So if you're using regular program, not a function, regular program, then you're just gonna do x is equal to input, enter variable x to calculate x and y. X can be either a scalar, vector, or matrix. Okay, so make sure anytime you're using input in the regular program, you completely define as how user should enter the input. I'm gonna go ahead and copy that, change this to y to calculate f x comma y and g x comma y. X comma y. Copy this, copy, paste. All right. X and y can be, sorry, let's do this. X and y can be either this, x and y can be either that, or, and then of course you go ahead, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and copy those because it's the same equations. Alright, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and remove. If you wanna print out using fprintf, of course, if it is required, then you go ahead and use fprintf. I'm just going to remove the semicolon, so it's going to print out the values, and then I'm going to save it as the name, whatever name you want to give it. Of course, if this is one of the programs that you are submitting, then the name is going to be first name underscore last name underscore, let's say excise 10, whatever excise, I don't care. Okay. So observe, you can name your program any which way you want because it's not a function, but if it is a function, you have to save the function with the same name as the function name to call the function. So if you are, let's say if this exercise is exercise 11, so your function name should be Masood underscore Ijaz underscore ex11 if you are saving this script with the same name as your function name. So your function name should be the same as the script name, remember that. Okay, so when I execute this function, it's going to ask me to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and let's say x is 1 and 2 and y is 3 and 4 as I did. And then it's going to print out fxy, of course, is this, which is this value, and gxy is this. So this is the difference between a regular program that you can execute. You can use input to get input from the user. You can use fprintf, although I'm not using it, or you can use fprintf, you can use display, whatever. And the function where you don't use input because all the input is given through the input variables of the function. You don't use fprintf, or you don't want to remove the semicolon in front of fxy and gxy because all these values are just passed to the output variables. And then when you're calling the functions, those output variables you can print or do whatever. If you don't want to print, you want to use it in any other way, then you can use it as well. Okay, so this is what functions are.